You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast. Thumbs up from Jack. He's happy to start section 2 of our bumper show. Quick reminder that you can find us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and to subscribe on YouTube and all the podcast platforms that you have. Cross format hero. That's what we want. Cross format heroes. Sticking with the same format though. It's ODIs, but this time it's Pakistan in town. So after England barely warmed up really against Sri Lanka, as discussed very recently, England will be facing a slightly sterner test in the shape of Pakistan for a 3-match ODI series starting on Thursday. There are some T20s to follow, but we're sticking with the ODIs for now. Pakistan's last cricket was in April and May. They visited South Africa almost immediately after having hosted South Africa. And then they toured Zimbabwe and had some tests and T20s. And their results have been pretty Pakistani, I think. They absolutely smashed Zimbabwe in the test series. They won both by an innings, and it was a bit of a waste of everyone's time. But good to actually see some cricket going on between them and a tour of Zimbabwe.
Did you see, just on that point, after that, I think Shoaib Akhtar, or like dignitaries, no, it was Ramesh Raja in Pakistan, said that the test cricket will die if the games are that easy. So basically, Ramesh Raja was saying Pakistan need to get worse at test cricket here for people to actually engage with the sport, which I thought was a very controversial point of view from the great man.
It's probably not very forward-looking, is it? I mean, you could argue that maybe some other teams need to get better, but no, let's focus on bringing everyone down to the same level. We could franchise out Test cricket. How about that? Give everyone a pool of players to pick from. That could be interesting. Yeah, so they won the tests, but then the T20 series, Pakistan did actually manage to lose one of those to Zimbabwe and failed to chase 118, falling to 99 all out. So the sublime and the ridiculous in Pakistani cricket rumbles on, as always. But on the ODI side, their last games were in South Africa and they won a tight series 2-1, which is pretty impressive. It was pretty much full-strength South African team. Obviously, they're not as good as they have been in recent years, but they're still a pretty handy outfit, especially at home. So that was a pretty good performance from them. What do you make of Pakistan at the moment, Jack? Where do you think they sit in sort of the global sphere?
In white ball cricket?
Yeah.
They're an interesting in white ball cricket. They probably got 3 or 4 of the pieces that you need to be a really good side. So, particularly in 50 over cricket, Babar Azam's pretty decent, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then you've got Shaheen Afridi, who is right up there with the best bowlers in the world, I think, in 50 over cricket and in T20 cricket. So you'd think, on their day, they're going to be quite a good side. However, you mentioned them being bowled out for 99 against Zimbabwe. That's always in the locker. And that, when you talk about Pakistani cricket, it sounds a bit like a cliche, but it's some cliches exist for a reason. That's all I'm going to say. So I think they could well win a match against England, but I also would not be stunned if they lost 3-0.
Well, onto the squads. You mentioned a few of the players. The England squad is unchanged from what ended the Sri Lanka series. Pakistan, on the other hand, they have a fairly full strength touring party, but they have withdrawn Hyder Ali, who flouted some bio bubble protocols in the PSL. So naughty boy, slap on the wrist. He was cut. But yeah, other than that, it's the familiar names, the guys you mentioned: Babar Azam, Shaheen Afridi, Mohammad Rizwan's in there, Fakhar Zaman. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of talented cricketers in that Pakistan lineup, and certainly does sort of give you a sense that they could do something against England. I think Pakistan, for me, where they sort of, particularly in the weakness might be in the middle order of the batting. Where those victories against South Africa, they were quite heavily reliant on runs from Babar Azam, Imam ul Haq, and Fakhar Zaman in particular. So we're talking like top 3-4, and it kind of all goes a bit of a mess once you get past them. So I mean, that'll be the order of the day for England to win those games. It's got to be break the game open early. But if Babar Azam gets on a roll, we could be in for some proper fireworks.
Yeah, Dan, I'm interested to hear from you on this. We like the cricket I watch. I don't actually see too much of the Pakistani team. I tend to watch the IPL over the PSL.
Yeah,
I will catch Pakistan if they're on TV, but they're not always on the two channels that broadcast cricket in this country. So sometimes I miss them there. So I kind of mainly see them in England or at World Cups. Is there anyone we should be looking out for, or how do you rate this bunch overall?
yeah. Okay, so if we talk about like the T20 team in particular, I think that the two teams are kind of very opposing dynamics. So England are this team with pretty strong batting lineup, and I think it would be quite fair to say mediocre bowlers. And whereas Pakistan are kind of, to some extent, the reverse. They've got quite a strong bowling lineup, and they've got pretty mediocre batters. Now, the problem is, I mean, let's say England bat first in a match and they score like 190 in a T20. Is that too high for the ceiling of guys like Rizwan and Babar Azam? We've seen Babar Azam play quite a few match-losing innings in those sort of big chases quite a few times, and that's where I think that maybe it's a bad matchup for him, if that makes sense. Now, one thing I really like about Pakistan's team in T20 internationals is that they bat a long way down and they have genuine hitters. So players like Fahim Ashraf and Hassan Ali are just massive assets because they can hit like 20-25% boundaries lower down the order and just keep hitting when they're genuinely a viable 4-over bowler as well. So those kind of players are so rare in terms of skill set. I mean, you look at the IPL, if these players are allowed to play in the IPL, we've seen that those type of players just go for massive money, and I don't think that would be any different if they were available in the IPL. So yeah, that's one thing. Obviously, Shaheen Afridi is fantastic left armour, so that's another 4 overs locked for them. More unconvinced about their spinners, so I think they probably will look to play Usman Khadir, but I'm not 100% convinced about him at this level. Shadab Khan's really struggled with the ball over the last year or so. The one player I'm really looking forward to seeing, and it's quite ironic that we talked a bit earlier about the Sri Lankan kind of mindset when Rajapaksa didn't get in their squad due to some form of failing fitness test or something. Well, Pakistan, they don't seem to worry about that because they picked Azam Khan. Now, anyone who's seen Azam Khan, he's built, but this kid is amazing. He's an incredible player. He's got so much power. He really, really is an intent machine. I like him a lot as a batter in T20 cricket, and I can't wait to see him come up against England. To be honest with you, I really can't. I think that he could be the star of the series pretty much if they actually give him an opportunity. So he's one of those guys who will not die wondering. He will go off and just tee off straight away pretty much from ball one. And I really like a player like that. And I think that he's pretty much exactly what their sort of pedestrian top 4-5 need to kind of shake things up a bit, and then they've got the hitting power down the order. I think it could be a pretty competitive series actually, the white ball stuff against England. And that's something that I really think England need as well, because England's third or fourth team could have been beaten Sri Lanka pretty comfortably, and England at this point in time they're in a position where they can make mistakes in matches and get away with it. Whether they can against Pakistan on such a regular basis, and whether they will in World Cups, specifically in away conditions, is another matter entirely. And that's why I think England need to improve their processes and look for as many marginal gains as they possibly could, or indeed find the faults that identify the faults that they're currently making.
I was going to say, do you think England need to lose a game in this series to just kind of focus the mind a bit?
100%. I think it would be the best thing that could happen to them.
What's your prediction? Let's do predictions.
For the T20s and the ODIs,
Yeah.
I think England 2-1 for each.
Max?
I'm going to go with. I was going to go with 2-1 for each, so let's not do that. Let's say there was some rain. I think England will win the ODIs 2-0, and I think the T20s will be 2-1 to England as well.
Oh, so Max has made a play for the rain. I'm going to say 3-0 in both. It's going to be
to England, yeah.
Yeah. I just got a feeling about this one. Let's do West Indies v Sri Lanka because that was quite good as well. We did talk about this a little bit on the last show, but not in loads of detail. It didn't exactly go the way we all thought that it would. As South Africa managed to claim a 3-2 series win over the West Indies in the Caribbean. In the final match, South Africa managed to defend 168. We spoke with Daniel Gallen, who is a South African cricket journalist, about coming on the podcast to talk about this. He wasn't able to make it at the end. His summary of the South African team, though, which he did give me, was they are an efficient but flawed side. Dan, you're nodding. Can you elaborate on why they're an efficient but flawed side?
So they have one major issue with their batting, but West Indies weren't able to exploit it, but other teams will. And I think that's why we can take this series scoreline with a little bit of a pinch of salt. So the main issue that South Africa have is that pretty much all of their batters are not good strikers against spin. So they can get off to some decent starts in the power play a lot of the time, but then they really struggle in the middle overs. Now, West Indies had no good spinners. And that's a huge problem. I mean, one game, Chris Gale was their only spinner. so I mean, we talk about processes, we talk about matchups a lot. Well, West Indies obviously just weren't too worried about that in this particular series at all. They just played whoever they thought were their best team and was like, right, we'll see if we can out-hit you. It didn't work, obviously, but I think any team with half a brain cell can, in terms of the analytics department, will be able to tell you that South Africa, you got to bowl a lot of spin to them.
Fair enough.
West Indies didn't do that.
In the series, de Kock played pretty well. Shamsi, though, won player of the series. He picked up 7 wickets, Matt. Only went for more than 20 in one innings across the 5 matches against this West Indies Galactico batting lineup. That's got to be a career high for anyone, surely.
Yeah, it's a great sign as well for the T20 World Cup coming up. I mean, he looks a tricky player to get away for watching him. I wouldn't back myself, even if I had all the talent in the world. Yeah, but no, it's a key thing, isn't it, to have something like that in your side, especially going into a subcontinent, UAE T20 World Cup. So that is a promising sign for South Africa.
Right. Final thing on this series then was that the West Indies, they struggled a little bit with the bat. I mean, in the first game they chased 160 in 15 overs, so we would say that that's not struggling. But then after that, it felt like pretty much every game they needed 165 to win, and they only managed that once more across the last 4 matches in that series. Is there something going wrong there? I noticed in the last match, Dan,
every winning score in that series was between 160 and 168.
Yeah. I noticed in the last game that Nicholas Pooran batted 7. That's a little bit weird, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it's far too low for him. He's this kind of supreme player of spin. So you would want to really bat him at, say, number 4 would be a much more appropriate. But they've kind of moved players up and down the order a bit. Hetmeyer batted 4 in one game. A couple of games, sorry. Russell even batted 4 in one game. I would bat Pooran over Hetmeyer every day of the week.
Yeah, I think Hetmeyer is one of the most overrated players in world cricket.
Yeah,
but it does occasionally come off for him. He is the living
gambler's
fallacy. The gambler's fallacy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll keep an eye on them. I mean, of the two, Dan, I think you've told us already that you think West Indies might be the dark horse. I don't know if this series changed your mind in any way.
No.
For the World Cup, obviously, later this year.
I don't know. I don't know if they are. I don't even remember saying that. They've got to win the boundary percentage count more often than they don't to win, far more often than they don't.
Maybe it was Knuckle, actually.
Yeah,
Just very different person.
Their batting is capable of, in theory, chasing anything, although I even think that has holes. We just talked about Hetmeyer. And also, I'm not sold as either or of Simmons or Andre Fletcher as an opener either. No. But their bowling is going to leak. So you've got Fidel Edwards, who's about 38, and didn't, as far as I remember, didn't do fantastically in a T20 Blast over the last couple of years when he played it. McCoy I quite like it, but haven't seen a great deal of him, but his numbers are pretty decent. Bravo is certainly at the wrong end of the age curve. Russell, you can't rely on him to bowl 4 overs every game in, game out. You certainly can't do that with Pollard. So, and they've got, unless they can get Narayan to play for them, they've got no spin options. So they can hit 20+% boundaries, but they're going to concede a lot of boundaries too. Yes. And that's a big problem.
Right. Concurrent to this going on, the England and India women's team continued their series. England are now 2 points up going into the final 3 matches, which will all be T20s, which means India will need to win all 3 to claim the series win. England will need to win 2. In the ODIs, the ball was largely on top of the bat as both teams struggled a little bit. I think probably the game of the series was the final one, where India chased down 220 for the loss of 7 wickets. Because of rain, the match was slightly reduced. I think it was 45 overs or 46 overs. The India captain Mitali Raj led India to victory with 75 not out, and in doing so became the leading run scorer in international women's cricket, which is pretty good going. Over 10,000 runs, or over 10,273 runs, taking over from Charlotte Edwards. Max, would you be pretty happy with 10,000 runs in international cricket?
I'll be happy with 10,000 runs in any cricket. It's a phenomenal achievement, and I think it's been a really good series, hasn't it? It's a real shame we couldn't get a result in the test, but aside from that, it's been great. I've been thoroughly enjoying it.
Dan, I don't know how much you cover women's cricket in your role as an analyst. From what I understand, England should have enough to wrap the series up in the T20s, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't cover it a great deal, but I've built a couple of models and stuff in the past to equate player quality. Wouldn't always say it, based on that basic model finding that I had, I wouldn't say that England maybe picked the best team a lot of the time, but that's certainly not anything new with the England processes, that's for sure. They've obviously a very, very strong women's side and perform well in the ODIs though. So yeah, probably wrap up in the T20s as well.
Cool. The final thing to mention, or final couple of things to mention, are domestic things. In the 100, it would have been good to, Dan, I mean, you might have to recuse yourself from this debate, but we saw, what was the name of this draft? It was the bonus draft. Wildcard, that was it. Each team got to pick one player who has been playing in English domestic cricket this year to top up their squad. I won't run through all the names and where everyone went. I will ask you, Dan, if you're able to answer this, who you think made the best decision besides Birmingham Phoenix in this draft.
Obviously we did. Obviously I'm delighted with picking up Pennington, who was someone that we really wanted. I think if you look at the first few rounds, I think that I was quite surprised that Southern Brave were able to get Lintott. He went that far in the wild card, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good pickup for them.
Cool. Max, we know who will be playing for who at this point in time now. Which of the teams do you think you're most excited by? For people listening at home as well, we will do a proper preview of the 100 at some point in the next couple of weeks because it starts on the 21st. But if you're having a look through, Max, who did you like?
Well, I feel like my my allegiance has to go towards the team with the most Surrey players in it. So I do feel like the Oval Invincibles and their phenomenal badge of a random lottery hand looks pretty handy. I think you've got the only issue for them is obviously if you end up without Sam Curran and Jason Roy in there, if they end up missing a few games. But I think they've got such a good core of young and domestic talent in there. You've got like I think the 100 should suit Will Jacks down to the ground. If you think about his like 25 ball 100 he scored in that T10 friendly a couple of years ago, get on the gambler's fallacy train again. But there's you've got Saqib Mahmood, Laurie Evans knows the T20 very well. So there's a good bunch of players there, but I think they might be a little weak on the overseas stars. I feel like Narayan's. Maybe it's time. Maybe it'll be how Narayan gets himself back into form. But
possibly, yeah,
I think they're maybe a bit light on that compared to some of the other sides. But I'll go with them for personal reasons.
Are you disappointed that you didn't get another Surrey man in the wild card?
Nah, we got enough, haven't we? They keep getting injured anyway.
I think I'd probably go Southern Brave. I haven't had a big look at all the teams, but I think they, maybe with the exception of being a spinner or two, have some good players. And any team with Andre Russell in and a limit of 100 balls is going to be dangerous. I'd have thought.
Also,
we had
10 balls with Jofra Archer in a row.
We had a couple of questions about this from a couple from Dina. So, if you remember these and ask them again when we do our preview show, which we'll advertise on Twitter, we'll get to them. Someone called Bobson Dugnut, though, highlighted an Instagram post by BBC Cricket of Dom Sibley with his hand behind his ear. It says, patience and determination, Dom Sibley. Then underneath, a traditional batter, Dom Sibley has the technique and ability to adapt his style to look assured against even the best around. Advertising the 100 here. How do you rate Tom Sibley's chances in the 100, fellas? Nice steady start to the innings.
But see it out until the timeout. That's the game, isn't it? And then change tack. I have seen him play in the blast and open the batting, but yeah, I don't think Dom Sibley is the man to go for.
That is obviously recused from this one, as this is a question for regarding his team. But I did think that was quite funny, and have a look on the BBC social media if you want to see Dom Sibley also doing quite a funny pose. Lastly, then, Max, James Anderson.
Yes, James Anderson today brought up his 1,000th first-class wicket, and he did so in the process of his best figures ever. Took 7 for 19, as Kent was skittled for 74 all out. And at one point, I think he'd taken his five-wicket haul came up for conceding about 3 runs, I think it was. So there may be a lesson to be learned there of not choosing to bat first when when James Anderson's on the opposite team. It looks like it might swing, and also, I don't know if the pitch played particularly badly, but the ball was. I saw the highlights. The ball was swinging around corners, and it looked like a pitch that had been played on for about 15 days in a row.
Yeah. It did look like it looked exactly like that. It was good. But anyway, 1,000 wickets, that's a lot. Do you reckon anyone will ever get 1,000 first-class wickets again, Dan?
Darren Stevens.
I was going to say Darren Stevens. He's 64.
Well, Darren Stevens only taken one for 28 so far, and I was thinking if it was perfect conditions for Anderson, it's also probably perfect conditions for Darren Stevens as well.
Yeah,
he's on 572 at the age of 45, so we might have to get him up to about 60 to get.
Yeah, I'm sure he can do it.
Yeah. Right, fellas, I think that's the end of this week's Cricket Podcast. Dan, do you want to mention where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. At SA Advantage on Twitter.
Cool. You can find us at The Cricket Pod. You can find our Patreon, thecricketpod.com patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. And you should, follow us on YouTube, leave us a comment, etc., etc. We will be back, I think, next week, won't we, Max, for more Cricket Podcast. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.